What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to talk about the latest in the world of iOS, including iOS 16.4 and some new details that have come to light in the days following its release. We'll also discuss iOS 16.5 Beta 1, some new iOS 17 rumors, a big leak for the iPhone 15, why we might not see the Apple mixed reality headset at the Worldwide Developers Conference after all, another wild and funny AirTag story, and much more. And if you want to stay updated with all things Apple, check out my new Apple Den newsletter. This is a free weekly newsletter where you're going to receive unfiltered Apple news and opinions, along with weekly wallpapers and much more, all delivered straight to your email inbox. I'm super excited for this, and I have a lot planned for it, so make sure you subscribe to that newsletter down in the description below. It's the first link up top. And we're going to start with iOS 16.4. So that was just released this past week, and the final version did have a different build number from the RC. It was one build ahead to be exact, and I noticed no difference at all in the software going from RC to the final, and it did also score the exact same scores in Geekbench. Now, as far as additional features in iOS 16.4, we did also receive PS5 DualSense Edge support. So if you have that controller that's extremely expensive, that is now supported on iOS and iPadOS 16.4. And then for the shortcuts application, I covered tons of changes to shortcuts in my What's New video. However, I didn't even cover all of them. So Apple does share like a changelog of everything that's been added to shortcuts, which is very helpful and very handy to look at after each update. And there are even more changes than I originally thought. So first off, if we go to the action for Find Photos, that can now find screen recording. So before it would only find photos and videos, but not screen recordings, but that has been added here in 16.4. Also, Get Device Details can now get the build number. The Play Music action resumes currently playing music if no music is passed as input. The Nothing action, which does nothing, now produces a variable with 0 items instead of producing no variable at all. And for macOS, the Find Apps action now finds and filters apps installed, and the Find Displays action finds and filters displays. And there are even more. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but if you are into shortcuts, 16.4 is like a must update because there are so many changes. And something else I wanted to talk about is the voice isolation feature for iOS 16.4. So I've actually had quite a few questions on this, especially on social media and in the comment section, but people are asking, does this really improve the sound quality of your phone calls? And what I found after testing this pretty extensively is that it really only makes a big difference, like a very noticeable difference with background noises. Like if you're in like a grocery store, if you're around like loud cars or something loud, this is going to make a big difference. The person on the other end of the phone, regardless of what version they're on, regardless of if they're on Samsung or on a landline phone, you're still going to sound better to them because this happens on device. It has nothing to do with the person on the other line. But I noticed that voice isolation will make a difference when reducing background noise, more so than just making you sound better, like your voice sound better when it's dead silent. Oh, and this will also help even if you have AirPods. This is not just for using it like on the speakerphone. Something else I noticed after updating multiple phones to 16.4 is that it reset my settings for the music and the Safari applications. Like when I went to library right here, all of these were selected, even though I have it changed now on this device. But once I updated, all of these reset, so everything was checked right here, even though I didn't have that previously. And same with Safari. A lot of my Safari settings were just reset back to default, and I had to go back and change those again. So that's quite annoying, and I know I'm not the only one because I did see you guys mention that as well. I did also want to briefly touch on the bullet point in Apple's release notes for 16.4 that says that the crash detection feature has been further optimized on the iPhone 14 and the newer Apple Watches, like my Apple Watch Ultra here. So I did just recently go to a theme park and I rode roller coasters. I did all kinds of crazy things and I had no issue. I didn't have any scares with my iPhone or my Apple Watch calling the police, calling 911 because I thought I was in a crash. So that seems to be fixed for the most part right now, but I would assume that Apple's going to continue optimizing that throughout the rest of iOS 16. And speaking of emergency services, the emergency SOS via satellite feature has now rolled out to more countries. So it just rolled out to Austria, Belgium, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Portugal. So iOS 16.4 not only included over 60 features and changes, but it also includes more than 30 security patches. And that is is a pretty big number. So you can see some of these right here affecting the kernel, affecting the neural engine. Some of these affect the camera, the calendar, CarPlay. There are several vulnerabilities in here. Find My, you could see so many issues in here that have been addressed. Now, thankfully, none of these were being actively exploited, so there's no sign of any of these actually being used out in the wild, but still, over 30 patches is not something, to balk at. That's a pretty big number. So I would definitely recommend updating. Even if you don't like any of the features, all these security patches are also a pretty big deal. But as far as bugs go that have not been patched, and these are not necessarily security bugs or anything major, but I did want to mention a couple of these here. So the first one is select all. So for whatever reason, this is gone from Safari now. So there used to be an option in here to select all, where you can select all of the text on a web page, but that is no longer here for some reason. Even if you go into Reader and you try to select all, there's no way to do that here in 16.4 or 16.5. And then I do also have issues still with the notification center lagging. So if I go up right here, sometimes it will just completely lag. You can see behind this bubble, it just lags and comes in very weird. So that is on 16.4 along with 16.5 still. So hopefully that gets fixed in the next release. But as far as performance and battery life goes, again, like I said in my 16.4 What's New video, I feel like performance and battery life are definitely better here in 16.4. So I think performance, more so than battery life, has improved with 16.4, the final release. It was much better than 16.3.1 in my opinion. I think it's the best, most stable build of iOS 16 yet, as it should be. Usually, the later you get on in the cycle, it should be the most stable, so really no surprise there. But battery life, I thought it was going to be better than it actually is after using it for multiple days now. I do still think it's better than 16.3.1, but I still feel like it's not as good as it was on iOS 15, which is kind of unfortunate, but hopefully we will get there with 16.5. But still, overall, I'm very pleased with both performance and battery life on 16.4. And as far as iOS 16.5 beta 1 goes, if you want to see my raw, unfiltered thoughts on this update, make sure you are subscribed to my newsletter. I talk about things I don't talk about in these YouTube videos, and I just really keep it real over there, but there's not really anything to talk about with 16.5 beta 1. It's a pretty yawn update, very boring update so far. So now what is next for Apple? So next up, in my opinion, is going to be 16.5 beta 2. And I think we are going to be on a 2-week release schedule from beta 1 to beta 2. So that would put us right there, April 10th, the week of April 10th. We're probably going to see that second beta on April 11th, because Apple does usually release the betas on a Tuesday. And then for the final release, we're probably not going to see that until sometime in May, potentially even beginning of June. However, I do think we're going to see 16.5 at some point in May. Now, in the meantime, we might even see a 16.4.1. So if we're going to see that, it's going to come at some point in April, most likely in the middle of April, if I had to guess. And that's probably just going to bring minor bug fixes and security patches. And then keep in mind, after 16.5 releases, we're probably going to see, obviously a 16.6 beta 1, but most importantly, we are going to see an iOS 17 beta 1 right here after the Worldwide Developers Conference on June 5th. So that first Monday of June is going to be a big day. We're going to see our first look at iOS 17. I will be live streaming the event here on my channel, so make sure you are subscribed for that. So we can really, that's the thing I'm looking forward to most out of everything I just mentioned. So now let's talk about some more iOS related news before we move on to the main news section of this video. So first thing I want to talk about is Apple Music Classical. So this did launch this past week, and it's actually a pretty solid application. So you can see in the App Store, it's currently sitting at number 3. It's actually above TikTok, which is kind of interesting. So it's number 3 on the top free charts list, and I think it's a pretty great application. So if you're into classical music, you will definitely want to check this out. It is included as a part of your Apple Music subscription. However, there is no standalone subscription for Apple Music Classical. So if you want to get access to this, you will need to have an Apple Music subscription. But it's so far, I'm really loving it. The quality is awesome. The discovery of different artists and different types of music is awesome. I've never really been too much into classical music, but this application is definitely helping me, to get more familiar with the genre and the artists and everything like that. So I'm enjoying it. If you like classical music, or if you're just open to listening to different types of music, I would highly recommend downloading it and checking it out. Apple Pay Later also launched this week, so it's only out for select users, but this actually looks really good as well. The UI is awesome, and it looks like there is going to be a setting for this inside of your wallet settings on your iPhone as well. This does require iOS 16.4 or higher higher. So if you do want to get access to Apple Pay Later, you do need to be updated to the latest software. But as far as the high yield savings account for your Apple Cash, that is still not here, even though we got the release of Apple Pay Later and 16.4. So it seems like that is still on the back burner for Apple. And then we did also get a release of iOS 15.7.4 this past week for devices that are not able to update to iOS 16. And all it included were some security patches. So really nothing major here, no new features or changes since it is a double point update, but there were some security patches that you will definitely want to update to if you are on an iOS 15 device. And then as far as iOS 17 goes, I did mention quite a few of these in my newsletter and also in my iOS 17 video when WWDC was confirmed. But it seems like we are going to get at least some new features in iOS 17 after all, because Mark Gurman did say that it's going to be a very minor update with hardly any new features because Apple is focusing on the headset, but now it seems like they are kind of shifting their focus back to iOS and including more features and changes. But something I did not mention this week that I think still should be talked about is that the new AirPods, again, those were referenced in the code for iOS 16.4. Why would Apple include a reference to new AirPods in the code if they were not coming soon? But we still don't know exactly what those AirPods are, if it's actually a new set of AirPods or if it's just AirPods Pro 2 with a new USB-C case. But nonetheless, we should still see those. Honestly, we could even see that at the Worldwide Developers Conference. That would be pretty rare, but it is still a possibility. Really, nobody knows at this point what type of hardware is coming at the conference. All right, so that's everything for iOS. Now let's move on to the main news section of this episode. And I just realized I'm still wearing my birthday shirt from when I turned 30 on my odometer, so let me go ahead and change out of that. All right, let's get started. All right, so let's kick things off with some bad news about the Worldwide Developers Conference. And I talked about this in my newsletter, but we might not be seeing the Apple headset after all at this event. And this comes from Ming-Chi Kuo, who tweeted this out. Because Apple isn't very optimistic about the mixed reality headset announcement, recreating the astounding iPhone moment, the mass production schedule for assembly has been pushed back by another 1 to 2 months to mid to late Q3 of this year. The delay also adds uncertainty to whether the new device will appear at WWDC 2023 as the market widely expects. Furthermore, due to the delay in mass production for assembly, the shipment forecast this year is only 200 to 300,000 units, lower than the market consensus of 500,000 plus units. The main concerns for Apple not being very optimistic regarding the market feedback to the headset announcement include the economic downturn, compromises on some hardware specifications for mass production, such as the weight, the readiness of the ecosystem and applications, and a high selling price, which now we're hearing $3,000 to $4,000 or even higher. And that last sentence there is very interesting because all along we heard that this headset is going to cost $3,000. We heard like $2,500 to $3,000. That's going to be the cost. But now, according to Kuo, he's saying $3,000 to $4,000 or more. So if it's 4,000 or even higher than that, that's just going to be wild. And it's, you know, that could be a reason why they're expecting to sell less of these than originally expected, which 500K is very low for Apple. You know, no matter how expensive something is, that is very low for Apple standards, but we'll see. And by the way, I do also want to mention that just because we're not going to see mass production until Q3 of this year doesn't mean that we can't see an announcement at this event and then just have it be released at the end of this year, if not early next year even. So Apple's done that before where they announce something and then release it months later. So that's also, you know, a possibility here. But anyways, moving on, let's talk about iPhone 15 leaks because now we have even more iPhone 15, especially the iPhone 15 Pro has a lot of leaks that came out this week. So first off, we're hearing that the mute button on the side of the iPhone 15 Pros could act as an action button like on the Apple Watch Ultra, meaning that it's going to give you quick access to certain functions. Now, this rumor comes from an anonymous Mac Rumors forum member who first leaked the accurate details about the dynamic island last year, if you remember. So they do have some type of credibility here. And, you know, this button, this little action button on the iPhone sounds cool in theory. Like I was really for it. But then I started thinking harder about it. I'm like, what would I actually use this button for? Like a quick access for like the camera, for the flashlight, to switch between focus modes. I'm not really sure what I would use it for. So let me know your opinion in the comments below, because I'm confused as to what I would actually use an action button on an iPhone for. Now, this same leaker is also claiming that the 15 Pro and Pro Max will have a new ultra low energy microprocessor that will allow for features like the new capacitive solid state buttons to remain functional when the device is off. So the side buttons, the action button, and the volume buttons will remain functional while the device is turned off, or like the battery power is out. And he's also saying that this action button will be customizable in terms of sensitivity thanks to a new sensitivity toggle in the settings. So this ensures that it works well with gloves and cases. So I know a lot of people's biggest concern about these capacitive buttons are how's it going to work with a case? And this kind of answers that. It's going to be customizable. Like you may not have to press it as hard, on certain settings, or you may have to press it really hard on certain settings that you'll be able to adjust in the settings application, which sounds awesome. And along with those leaks, we're also hearing new rumors that the iPhone 15 might ditch the SIM card tray in other countries, in more countries. So you know how last year eSIM was the only way to get an iPhone 14 here in the US, and now it's looking like that could expand outside of the US. So this new report comes from the French news site iGeneration, who reported that industry sources are saying the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro could also be released without a physical SIM card in France. And that's going to be interesting to see, because I know a lot of people, especially overseas, are kind of used to having those SIM cards and swapping them out a lot more than we do over here in the US. So I'm fully on board with eSIM. I love eSIM. So it'll be interesting to see how that, plays out over there in France, if this actually comes true. And then another week, another new iPhone 2G that is sealed and going up for auction. But this one is a little bit different, not because of who owned it like we've seen in the past, but because of a special sticker on it. So it has a Lucky You sticker on the box, which was put on some of the launch day iPhones back in 2007. A lot of people didn't know what the sticker was, if it was made up or what, but there were certain news sites back then that said there was a Lucky You sticker on some of the launch phones back then. The only downside for this one is that it's not considered mint condition, since there's a small hole in the plastic wrapping. But even still, the auction did end and the iPhone sold for $40,320. So that's a little on the low end, especially for what they've been going for lately, like the $50,000 to $60,000 range, but still not a bad price for a collector out there. I guess if you have the money. Again, like I've said before, I think these are just going to continue to go up in value. And then finally, you know it, another crazy AirTag story. That's like a theme here on these Apple Weekly episodes. I love bringing you guys like really funny AirTag stories. So this one is interesting. So a man was on a flight back from LAX to Atlanta, and when he got off the plane and went to baggage claim, he noticed that his luggage was not coming out. So he checked his AirTag that was thankfully placed in the luggage, which all of you should be doing as well. And sure enough, his suitcase had been stolen. And when he tracked down the man who stole it, who was still in the airport by the way, he noticed that the man not only had his suitcase in his possession, but he was also wearing his t-shirt and his jeans. So he confronted this guy and got all of his stuff back. So, I mean, how stupid can you be, really? I mean, this guy literally took his luggage and wore the guy's clothes. Come on now. But this is just another reminder that if you don't have AirTags in all of your belongings when you're out traveling, put them in there. I mean, you need AirTags in your luggage and in your camera bags and whatever else you bring around that you're, around other people where other people can take it. Always have an AirTag there for your protection, and try to hide it a little bit too. I try to hide mine, and put it inside of something so it's not as obvious right away. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Also check out this video. I think you might enjoy watching this one as well. And if you want to see all the other Apple Weekly episodes in a playlist, that is linked down in the description below.